Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Today I want to talk about Zoom. I have a big conference coming up, and as recording this in late January, early February, I have a big conference coming up. I'm not sure when this will be released on my podcast, but at any rate, we'll have over 100 people on Zoom. And what I find with respect to Zoom or Teams or whatever is that I'm always playing catch up, right? I got onto Zoom and it's like, I don't, there's so much here. I don't know that I can figure it all out, but I'm going to try and figure things out. And what I find is that they're coming up with enhancements faster than I can figure things out. You can connect it to Eventbrite. You can do this. You can do that. Hey, you can do this. No, I didn't. And maybe that's just the way of the world. I don't know that there's anybody out there who knows everything that's happening on Zoom or Teams or whatever, or any sort of platform. I think people buy phones and they use 10% of what the phone can do, or a computer or whatever it might be. We're all kind of, even my, Apple Watch, it's like, somebody will show me, how they're paying things with their Apple Watch. And other people are showing me other things that they're doing. And I don't think there's anybody doing it all. So there's always, we live in a time where there's always things to learn. So that being said, what I did was I fired out onto Zoom a question. I called a poll question, and I really intended for it to be a program here. I wanted to kind of gather some insight from people as to what they thought about Zoom. And so, the poll question read, another poll question for my weekly LinkedIn Live. Please take a moment to answer this. And so here was the question. Are you more interested in one-on-one Zoom conversations, i.e. get acquainted calls with quality people, or being involved with a group call setting with quality people? Now, quality people on either side. Do you want one-on-ones or do you want group calls? And, to be perfectly honest, my thinking was, okay, this is going to be just a lot of people wanting one-on-ones. I would rather have a one-on-one than being in a group call. And for the most part, well, I shouldn't say for the most part, I got a lot of responses. Interestingly enough, I probably sent it out to 300 or 400 people, and I got a lot of responses. Some not so nice. People out there, I'm not trying to sell you something. I just really wanted to kind of know your opinion. I'm sure some people disconnected with me on LinkedIn or unconnected with me on LinkedIn, and that's fine as well. But there were a lot of really interesting responses. And well, let me tell you my response to that question. Would I rather have a one-on-one conversation and be in a group with quality people? And for me, I would rather be in a one-on-one conversation. I just would. And it's just I'm more comfortable doing that. I find that when I'm on group calls, I tend to. There's always a small handful of people who will kind of hold court, if you will. They'll they're extroverts, or they're just people who are just adept at just kind of speaking up, and they're having a conversation, and a lot of people aren't. So that's really kind of my preference. And I thought that it would come out overwhelmingly people wanting one-on-one calls. And to be perfectly honest, one-on-one calls were the majority of people said. The majority of people said they would prefer to have a one-on-one call, i.e. the get acquainted call with quality people, as opposed to being on a group call. I mean, some people just loathe the group calls. Didn't really have a lot of people loathing the one-on-one calls, but it was interesting that the split between the one-on-one and the group calls was 60-40. Now, What is that statistically significant? No, it's not. I don't know that I had the numbers. I don't know how, I don't know, I didn't do that well in statistics, so I can't really say it's statistically significant. But I found it surprising. I knew that there would be some people who like the group calls. There are just some people who gravitate to that. But I didn't think that the group calls would be probably 40%. And again, I don't know how scientific this is, but I talked to or sent this out to a lot of people and got a lot of responses. And that's, really kind of what it shook down as, is that there were a lot of people out there that preferred the group calls over one-on-one calls. And why that is, I'm not exactly sure. I think there are people out there that just aren't comfortable with the one-on-one calls for whatever reason. They like to, they just they're just not, they're not comfortable for whatever reason. I guess I'm trying to speculate. I could speculate, but I hate to do that. But there were certainly reasons why. I can certainly speak to my own opinion as to why I like one-on-one calls. I like to get acquainted with people. I like the notion that, okay, I can zero in my attention on one person. When I get on those one-on-one calls, I will do a little bit of research on the front end. I'll certainly look at their LinkedIn profile. If I have a website of theirs, I'll go to that. And I will spend, 15, 20 minutes looking into somebody and just trying to understand who they are and what they've done, and create talking points. Where can I help them? Where do we have some commonalities? I will do those things. In a group call, I don't have that option. I'm just kind of going in, and I don't necessarily know who's going to be on the group call. I just, but again, that's me, and that's, why I like the one-on-one calls. And I think other people have their own opinions with respect to that. And for me, the group calls, I don't understand why, I don't, that's not my preference. And so I've really never thought about it. But there were 40% of the people, and you know I think it comes down to what people's businesses are, and we're so we're so prone to kind of looking at our own world, at our own existence, and making judgments on our own existence, and not really being open to the notion that other people have different ways of doing business or living their lives. A metaphor or a parallel to this is, I noticed, being involved in church, that there are people who are involved in church, and um, people tend to look at their own little involvement, if you will, as, if you're not involved with me, then if you're not involved with what I do and I don't see you, then it's not happening. Um, and it's kind of the same thing here. It's like, and I think that's referred to as responsibility bias, or it's some sort of bias out there. You know, we're just, geez, I'm working hard, I'm doing this, I'm committed to this. Why isn't everybody committed to this? And along the same lines, it's like, this is how I do business. These are the types of people I want to meet, and this is what I prefer, one-on-one. And because it's my own little, very narrow view of the world, I'm not thinking about what other people are how they operate and what they're selling. But in looking at the people who were part of this large minority split, the 40 split of people who preferred being involved with a group Zoom call with quality people over being on a one-on-one call, I started to realize that they had businesses that were very high volume, low touch. Um, and there are, my business is just the opposite. It's a lower volume, it's a higher touch. I'm selling a franchise. I don't talk to everybody who comes into the organization, joins the organization anymore, but I talk to enough people, and I figure that's the way. It's a very highly relationship oriented business. But there are people out there who are coaches and consultants, for example, or other types of businesses, and they need to get the volume, and so being in a group is much better for them. It's an easier way for, hey, they can get into a group, they can do their 30-second commercial, they can do whatever, and get their link out, get their program out to lots of people, and they feel like that's more productive, and it probably is more productive than having a series of one-on-one 15-minute one-on-ones. I'm not judging either. I just, the purpose of this is, the title of this episode was, this is the perfect way to network on Zoom. And I don't know that there is a perfect way. That's kind of one of these, I guess, clickbait to get people to tune in. I don't know that the perfect way to network on Zoom is what works best for you. And if it's one-on-ones, then do your one-on-ones, but understand that there are people out there that like to be in the groups. And I should have known better, because I do know lots of people that make up this 40% that, they might be on 6 of these calls over the course of a day, and they're totally jazzed about it. I've got 3 more of these calls. This is great. I get to, over the course of a day, they might be in front of, 100, 150 people in various calls, and that can add up rather quickly if you're on Zoom calls that are 20 people, 50 people. It adds up quickly, and they like doing that. For me, it's like, if I have one a week, that's plenty to do a group call. But on the flip side, I will, I might do 10 one-on-one calls over the course of the week, and it feels like it's more time consuming perhaps, but they just have a different point of view. So I think when it comes to Zoom, really when it comes to anything with respect to business online or business in general, we have to be understanding that other people just approach their businesses in very different ways. And, even when I was practicing law, I had, fellow attorneys. I had an attorney that I worked with, and this is all pre-Zoom, pre-email, pre-everything. He had to have his own office, and he had to have an assistant, and he had to have, a paralegal. Me, I started out of a spare room in my house, and I had a phone number that piggybacked off our home number, and I just took a very different path than he did. Was it bad? No, it wasn't bad. It's just we both found success, but we just found success a different way, and we really can't judge people based on how they try to do it. There's what's the saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? It's it's kind of the same sort of thing. So be open-minded as to how other people do things, and maybe you might learn something along the way. That's what I have found.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.